I would have left her years ago, if I'd known. My brother said it quietly, staring at the floor, not at me. No anger. No shouting. Just exhaustion so deep it felt heavier than rage. That sentence landed harder than any accusation ever could. Because I had known. Not everything. Not the full scope. But enough. Enough to speak up. Enough to question. Enough to stop what came next. But I didn't. Now it was too late. The truth didn't come out before the pregnancy announcement. Not before they bought the house. Not before he turned down a job offer in another state for his family. It came out after. After the affair had ended. After the damage was baked into their lives. After leaving meant losing half of everything he'd built, including years he would never get back. He finally found the messages by accident. Old ones. Buried. Proof she'd been unfaithful long before anyone suspected. Long before I'd told myself it wasn't my place. He asked me one question. Just one. Did you ever think something was off? I couldn't lie. The silence between us stretched until it said everything for me. That was the moment I understood something I'll carry forever. The truth doesn't just hurt when it comes out, it hurts where it lands in time. And sometimes, finding out late is worse than not knowing at all. To everyone else, their marriage was solid. Not flashy. Not dramatic. Just, reliable. The kind people used as an example when talking about doing it right. They rarely fought in public. They showed up to every family event together. Holidays were coordinated, photos were smiling, routines were steady. She played the role of devoted wife perfectly, thoughtful gifts, affectionate comments, constant reassurance. My brother trusted her completely. He talked about her like she was his anchor. When he made decisions, he framed them around us and our future. He never once doubted her loyalty. Why would he? She gave him no reason to, at least, not where anyone could see. Even when stress showed up, it looked normal. Work pressure. Money conversations. To everyone else, their marriage was solid. Not flashy. Not dramatic. Just, reliable. The kind people used as an example when talking about doing it right. They rarely fought in public. They showed up to every family event together. Holidays were coordinated, photos were smiling, routines were steady. She played the role of devoted wife perfectly, thoughtful gifts, affectionate comments, constant reassurance. My brother trusted her completely. He talked about her like she was his anchor. When he made decisions, he framed them around us and our future. He never once doubted her loyalty. Why would he? She gave him no reason to, at least, not where anyone could see. Even when stress showed up, it looked normal. Work pressure. Money conversations. The signs were small. That's why they survived so long. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that screamed affair. Just moments that didn't quite fit, brushed aside because no one wanted to be the person who overreacted. She became strangely protective of her phone. Not secretive, just careful. Screen always face down. Notifications silenced. Quick smiles when messages came in. We joked about it once. She laughed it off. There were sudden changes in routine. Errands that took longer than expected. Girls' nights that didn't include any actual friends we knew. Last-minute plans she couldn't explain clearly, but also didn't feel the need to. She talked about loyalty a lot. Almost excessively. Any story about cheating, a movie, gossip, a celebrity scandal, triggered a mini lecture. It sounded moral on the surface, but in hindsight, it felt like rehearsal. My brother noticed some of it. I know now because he admitted it later. But every time a doubt surfaced, she had an explanation ready. Reasonable. Calm. Delivered with just enough affection to make him feel guilty for even questioning her. And the rest of us followed his lead. We trusted his trust. It was easier to label the moments as quirks. Stress. Personality. Nothing worth disrupting a marriage over. That's how red flags survive, not by being invisible, but by being small enough that everyone agrees to ignore them. By the time the pattern was clear, it wasn't a warning anymore, it was a timeline. There were moments when the words almost left my mouth. Little windows where I could have said something, anything, and changed the direction of everything that followed. Once, after a family dinner, my brother mentioned she'd had a rough week and hadn't been answering her phone much. He laughed it off, but I remember hesitating, wondering if I should ask why. Another time, she canceled plans last minute with an excuse that didn't make sense. I caught my brother staring at his phone a little too long afterward. He looked confused, not angry. I told myself confusion wasn't proof. I even drafted a message once. Just a question. Hey, are you okay? Something feels off. I stared at it for 10 minutes before deleting it. I didn't want to plant doubt in his mind without certainty. That was the justification I kept returning to, without proof. Proof felt like a requirement. Like a moral threshold I wasn't allowed to cross. Anything less felt like sabotage. And then there was fear. Fear of being wrong. Fear of being blamed. Fear of being the one who started something. Families have a way of punishing the person who disrupts the peace, even when they're right. So I stayed quiet. Each time, I told myself I was being respectful. Mature. Responsible. Only later did I understand what those moments really were. They weren't doubts. They were chances. I didn't stay silent because I didn't care. I stayed silent because everyone around me taught me that speaking up was dangerous. In our family, peace was prized above honesty. Problems were handled quietly, or not at all. You didn't confront, you adjusted. You didn't accuse, you endured. And if something ugly surfaced, the first instinct was always to smooth it over, not expose it. When I hinted that something felt off, I was met with soft resistance. You're reading too much into it. Don't borrow trouble. Marriages go through phases. Those words wrapped around my doubt and softened it just enough to make silence feel reasonable. I also told myself it wasn't my marriage. That crossing that line would make me intrusive. Disloyal. Self-righteous. I convinced myself that staying out of it was the mature thing to do. And underneath all of that was fear, not of being wrong, but of being right. Because if I spoke up and the truth came out, nothing would be the same again. Holidays would fracture. Alliances would form. Someone would have to choose sides. So I waited. I told myself that if it was real, it would come out on its own. That the truth didn't need my help. I didn't realize then that time doesn't reveal the truth, it protects the lie. By choosing silence, I wasn't neutral. I was choosing comfort over courage. And the bill for that choice was still waiting to be paid. The truth didn't come out in a dramatic confession or a sudden burst of honesty. It leaked. Slowly. Messily. Too late to stop the damage. My brother found out the way people usually do when they've trusted too much for too long, by accident. A notification on her phone she didn't expect him to see. A name he didn't recognize paired with a familiarity that couldn't be explained away. When he asked, she laughed it off at first. Said it was nothing. A coworker. A joke taken out of context. But this time, something stuck. He checked again later. Then again the next day. Patterns emerged where excuses used to live. Deleted messages. Calls taken outside. Stories that didn't line up the way they used to. When he finally confronted her for real, not gently but desperately, she broke, not into tears, but into anger. She accused him of invading her privacy. Of not trusting her. Of turning into someone paranoid. That's when he knew. By the time the words "it just happened" came out of her mouth, the betrayal was already old. Months old. Long enough that it had a rhythm. Long enough that lies had become muscle memory. I watched my brother realize, in real time, that the life he believed in had been edited without his consent. And the worst part? As he spoke, his eyes kept drifting toward me, like some part of him already knew I had seen this coming. That's when silence stopped feeling passive. It started feeling complicit. When the truth finally reached the rest of the family, it didn't land like a clean break. It landed like disbelief. At first, there was silence, the kind that means everyone is scrambling to protect the version of reality they preferred. My mom kept repeating, "This doesn't sound like her," as if saying it enough times could undo what had already happened. My aunt asked whether my brother was sure, whether he might be misinterpreting things. Someone even suggested stress had made him paranoid. Then came the questions that weren't really questions. Are you sure it was physical? Maybe it was just emotional. People make mistakes. No one asked how long it had been going on. No one asked how my brother was sleeping, eating, breathing. They focused on damage control instead, what this would do to the family, how it would look, who needed to keep quiet. My sister-in-law sat there calm, wounded, offended. She cried at the right moments. Spoke softly. Let others defend her without asking them to. And my brother? He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. Like the ground under him had shifted and no one else could feel it. That's when I understood something painful. The shock wasn't about her betrayal, it was about the inconvenience of the truth. It didn't happen all at once. At first, my brother stayed in this strange, frozen state, like if he didn't move, the reality wouldn't either. He kept replaying conversations out loud, asking no one in particular, why would she say that if it wasn't true, or I remember that weekend, she said she was sick. Then the dots started connecting. Small things. Missed calls. Late nights that never made sense. The sudden password changes he'd laughed off because he trusted her. I watched his face change every time another memory clicked into place. Not anger, not yet. Something worse. Shame. He kept apologizing. To me. To our parents. Even to her, somehow. He said things like, I should have known, and I was so stupid. That broke me more than the affair itself. The night it really hit him, he locked himself in the guest room and didn't come out until morning. When he did, his eyes were red and empty. He told me he hadn't slept, that every time he closed his eyes, he saw his entire marriage replaying with a different meaning. I wasted years defending a lie, he said quietly. And I almost lost you because I didn't want to hear the truth. That was the moment I knew the collapse wasn't just emotional. It was irreversible. The regret came after the shock wore off. Once the denial cracked, everything poured out at once. My brother started replaying every argument where he defended her and every moment he dismissed my concerns. He admitted that, deep down, there had always been a quiet discomfort, a voice he kept silencing because admitting the truth meant admitting his life wasn't what he believed it was. He told me he felt humiliated. Not just by the affair, but by how confidently she had lied while he stood beside her, protecting her image. He said the worst part wasn't that she cheated, it was realizing how easily she watched him trust her. One night, he broke down completely. I found him sitting on the floor of his apartment, surrounded by half-packed boxes, staring at their wedding photos on his phone. He kept whispering, I gave her everything. I made excuses for her. I chose her over my own instincts. Then came the guilt. He apologized again, this time with clarity. For doubting me. For choosing comfort over truth. For letting the family pressure silence the one person who wasn't lying to him. I thought staying ignorant would protect me, he said. But it just destroyed me slower. That was when I realized his regret wasn't just about her betrayal. It was about betraying himself. After the collapse, my brother and I spent hours talking through everything, trying to trace the chain of what-ifs and missed chances. The questions haunted us both. What if I had spoken up sooner? What if he had trusted his instincts instead of everyone else's reassurances? What if she hadn't been so skilled at hiding her true self? He kept saying, over and over, if only I had listened to you. If only I had asked more questions. If only I hadn't let everyone else decide what was okay for me. Each if only felt like a knife twisting deeper, not just in his heart, but in mine too. I hadn't spoken up not out of cowardice, but because I was convinced the family's advice, their insistence on silence, was right. And that hesitation had cost him years of illusions and wasted love. We went back over vacations, anniversaries, dinners, moments where the cracks were there, tiny but undeniable, if you knew where to look. Each one screamed at us in hindsight. The sudden late nights, the vanishing weekends, the too perfect smiles for cameras. We realized that the story could have been different if honesty had outweighed appearances. But the truth was painful, the past couldn't be rewritten. Every missed cue, every ignored gut feeling, every polite silence had paved the way for this devastation. Timing changes everything, my brother said quietly. And we had the worst timing imaginable. It was the first time he admitted, without shame, that the life he believed in wasn't just shattered by her lies, it had been shattered by the delay itself. And that realization hung in the room like a storm cloud, heavy and suffocating, leaving only one unavoidable truth: nothing could undo what had already happened. The moment we all had been avoiding finally came, her carefully constructed mask cracked, and everything beneath it spilled out. It wasn't sudden or dramatic, it was quiet, chilling, and undeniable. The charming, flawless wife everyone admired revealed the cold, calculating person she had been all along. It started with small slips, an unguarded comment, a look too sharp, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then the truth hit like a tidal wave. She had lied about finances, about friends, about where she was when she was supposedly working late. Every excuse she had ever given, every tear she had shed in front of us, suddenly felt rehearsed. My brother watched her unravel and wince as the realization hit him that this woman he had loved, defended, and built a life with was nothing like the person he thought he knew. She tried to charm, to manipulate, to deflect, but the cracks had widened too far. Family members who had once dismissed concerns now watched in stunned silence, unable to deny the evidence staring them in the face. She had always been obsessed with appearances, and now that obsession had turned into a weapon against her. Her perfect life crumbled in real time, not because of confrontation, but because her lies couldn't hold under scrutiny anymore. For the first time, we saw her without the filters, without the smiles, without the rehearsed empathy. And the truth was worse than any suspicion: she was remorseless, strategic, and utterly self-serving. That day, we all understood something we had ignored for too long: her betrayal wasn't just about the affair. It was about the careful, deliberate way she had orchestrated an entire life of illusions, counting on no one to challenge her, until it was far too late. After her mask fully fell, the tension in the family became almost unbearable. Everyone who had stayed silent, everyone who had dismissed my warnings, now faced the weight of their inaction. The blame wasn't just on her anymore, it was on all of us who had allowed the lies to continue. Parents whispered regrets behind closed doors, siblings exchanged guilt-laden glances, and my brother, he was drowning in it. He admitted to me one night that part of his devastation came from realizing he had relied too heavily on the opinions of others rather than trusting his own instincts. "We all chose comfort over truth," he said, voice barely audible. "And that choice cost everything." Even I felt it, the heavy responsibility of knowing the signs but hesitating, trusting the family's reassurances. I had wanted to protect my brother from pain, but instead, I had delayed it, and that delay had allowed the betrayal to grow deeper. The moral weight of silence became a shared burden. Family gatherings became quiet, strained affairs. Every smile felt forced, every casual conversation edged with tension. We were living reminders of how easy it is to let deception persist when everyone hopes it's not true. Each of us carried guilt in different forms: shame for ignoring instincts, regret for silencing warnings, and sorrow for trusting appearances over reality. In the end, the betrayal didn't just ruin one marriage. It exposed the cracks in all of us, the ways we failed to act, the ways we failed to protect one another, and the ways we allowed fear and politeness to outweigh the courage to speak up. Guilt became our constant companion, and it was clear that no apology, no explanation, could fully wash it away. Even after the truth was out, the damage lingered like a shadow over everything. Trust, once so effortless within our family, had been shattered. My brother couldn't look at anyone, not his wife, not me, not even his closest friends, without feeling a pang of suspicion. Every interaction carried the echo of lies, every memory tainted by betrayal. The emotional fallout was slow and relentless. My brother withdrew from family gatherings, hesitant to be reminded of what had happened. Conversations that used to be easy now felt like minefields, and laughter seemed foreign, like something we'd all forgotten how to do naturally. Even small gestures of kindness were met with guardedness, the unspoken fear lingered that another illusion could crumble at any moment. For me, the pain was different. I was haunted by what-ifs and the lingering guilt of silence. I had warned, I had tried subtly, but I hadn't pushed hard enough. Each family gathering became a reminder that even truth, when delayed, cannot undo the harm. The betrayal left scars beyond relationships. It seeped into our everyday lives, my brother questioning his judgment, family members second-guessing themselves constantly, and me wrestling with the moral weight of knowing that silence can sometimes be as destructive as a lie. It was clear that some things could never be repaired. Trust, once broken this thoroughly, does not simply return with time. It must be rebuilt, piece by piece, and even then, the shadows of betrayal remain, a permanent reminder that the cost of delayed truth is measured not only in lost love, but in the fragile, lingering fracture of the human heart. For years, her charm had been her armor. She controlled perception with ease, making everyone believe in the perfect life, the flawless marriage. But now, the dynamic had shifted. The truth, once silenced by politeness and appearances, finally held the weight it deserved. Her influence began to crumble, and the power she had wielded over the family evaporated. Conversations that used to tiptoe around her now carried honesty. No longer could she deflect, manipulate, or charm her way out of confrontation. Family members, once hesitant to speak, began sharing observations and feelings they had buried for years. Each revelation chipped away at the illusion she had meticulously built. My brother, though broken and cautious, found a quiet strength in acknowledging reality. He no longer defended her, he observed, questioned, and confronted. It was subtle at first, but slowly, the balance of power shifted. The wife who had thrived on deception was now cornered by truth, her perfection no longer enough to shield her from the consequences of her actions. Even the wider family felt the change. Those who had once silenced others now recognized the moral weight of honesty. The narrative that had protected her crumbled, replaced by a collective understanding that appearances can no longer outrank integrity. For the first time in years, the scales were tipping, not through revenge, not through punishment, but through the undeniable force of truth. And in that shift, we all began to see that reality, however painful, is always stronger than any illusion. In the quiet aftermath, life didn't return to what it had been. The marriage was over, and trust, once broken, couldn't simply be restored. But in the wreckage, there was clarity. My brother slowly rebuilt his life, learning to listen to his instincts, to value truth over appearances, and to protect his own heart before anyone else's illusions. The family, scarred but wiser, carried the lessons of delayed honesty. We understood now that silence, even with good intentions, can be complicity. Every hesitation, every ignored suspicion, had allowed the betrayal to grow stronger, leaving deeper wounds. The cost of waiting to speak up was painfully clear: lost years, broken bonds, and the haunting weight of what-ifs. I learned something too. Courage doesn't guarantee comfort, it can bring conflict, awkwardness, even temporary pain. But delaying truth for the sake of peace only prolongs suffering. I realized that the right moment to speak up is rarely convenient, and waiting too long can make consequences irreversible. To anyone who suspects betrayal within their family, don't underestimate the power of your voice. Silence can protect the wrong people, while honesty, even delayed, at least honors reality and your integrity. The truth may not heal everything, but living in its shadow is far better than living under a carefully constructed lie. And in that lesson, amidst the sorrow and regret, there was a fragile hope, that awareness, courage, and timing could prevent the same pain from repeating, even if it couldn't undo the past.